In 2018, a decade into the golden age of comic book movies, was a time when origin stories had long overstayed their welcome. However, that same year, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse astounded moviegoers. The film was a heartfelt, well-written, beautifully animated Spider-Man origin story from Miles Morales, garnering universal praise and anticipation for a sequel. Now, in 2023, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse swings onto our screens, but does it manage to deliver a compelling story and, more importantly, live up to its massive expectations? Across the Spider-Verse is brilliant, using the multiverse to its full extent while following the first film's trend of reshaping classic Spider-Man stories to create something fresh. Nonetheless, a few key issues prevent Across the Spider-Verse from reaching the same near-perfect heights as its predecessor. Before we move any further, there will of course be major spoilers ahead, so consider yourself warned. Almost a year and a half after the events of Into the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales now takes care of Brooklyn as its one and only Spider-Man, largely dealing with low-level crooks, high school, and balancing being a hero with family life. This all changes when The Spot meets Miles, becoming a multiversal threat in the process, reuniting the latter and Gwen Stacy, who team up with the Spider Society to protect the Spider-Verse and stop The Spot before he destroys everything. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is split into two distinct parts. The first hour follows the basic Spider-Man 2 formula of building up a villain, all the while showing Miles Morales' evolution and life as Spider-Man in addition to all the struggles that come with. The second half is where the film's secondary title kicks in, introducing and taking us across the Spider-Verse.
No shit.
During this second half, The Spot takes a back seat for the film to set up new characters, conflicts, and stakes that will cross over into the sequel. However, unlike movies such as The Crimes of Grindelwald that feel entirely like setup, Spider-Verse amazingly manages to escape that curse, delivering its own riveting dynamics and revelations. More so than the first feature, this film is meta at times, but works in favor of the plot, who builds its narrative around our cultural zeitgeist of Spider-Man and all his iterations in comics and on screen, carrying that idea that each Spider-Man goes through similar trials and tribulations, which we see when roaming through the Spider Society's training facility.
And stop Spider-Man!
As I stated before, the film suffers from a few key issues which I'll cover before moving on to the positives. Across the Spider-Verse has a big repetition problem, rehashing important conversations Miles has with Gwen and his parents over the course of the film, in addition to the now formulaic comic book introduction for each character.
Alright people, let's start at the beginning one last time.
The parroting of important themes through dialogue weighs heavy on the script, but, surprisingly enough, doesn't affect the breakneck pace. Across the Spider-Verse's usage of cameos are dealt with incredibly well, serving a narrative purpose, although a visit to Miss Chen in the Venomverse and an unsubtle nod to the MCU's live-action Prowler last uncomfortably long, ultimately feeling like fan service.
I clapped when I saw it!
Concerning The Spot, there is no way he'd be ostracized and out of a job from Alchemax, you know, the leading scientific corporation in Miles' universe. They'd instantly heal or promote him to leading scientist on teleportation, using his powers as a breakthrough for stable multi-dimensional travel.
He's out of line, but he's right.
Sadly, the film can also be very on the nose, showing and telling the audience what's happening. This is most notable whenever Miles talks to himself during the film's closing moments and before leaping into Mumbattan, as if the film doesn't trust its audience to figure out simple plot points. Now, with an abundance of characters old and new, there's bound to be one too many. This is the case with Jessica Drew, who does nothing of note during the film and could have been replaced by Miguel himself or his AI companion Lila. You can tell the only reason she was in the film was to set up her revolt against Miguel in the sequel, although to counter this, the writers could have at least cooked up a more compelling character to see on screen. I mean, just take example on Hobie Brown.
How are you even cooler under your mask?
I was just cool the whole time.
Moreover, Jessica Drew is pregnant on the battlefield, which I don't even know what to say. And if like me you thought it looked stupid in animation, here's a glimpse of how dumber it is in live action.
If I don't catch him now, who knows how many people he'll free?
You forgot one tiny detail. You're pregnant.
A few moments later.
Cut me some slack, I'm having a contraction. Oh, congratulations.
Peter B. Parker is equally a horrible parent for taking Mayday to work while Mary Jane's at home, and even worse, to what he knows is probably going to be a massive high-stakes fight at the end of the film.
It's so dumb.
The last two issues I'll touch upon are the Spider Society and the film's ending. The film constantly emphasizes on how important Spider-Man is to New York, showing us a crime-ridden, fiery metropolis in a world without him. If so, why are hundreds of Spider people just chilling somewhere that isn't their dimension? Not to mention that Across the Spider-Verse also portrays a majority of them as incompetent, failing to catch a single individual. Finally, the film wraps up at what seems to be the end of its second act, and could have clearly been a complete 3-hour experience. Now, considering everything set up solely needs to be paid off, I'm not sure Beyond the Spider-Verse will be able to properly maintain a feature-length runtime without massive amounts of padding.
Not a great plan.
Let's move on to the positives. The film treads at a breakneck pace due to its use of concise and highly efficient visual storytelling through voiceovers and editing, all the while managing to hit all the emotional beats by giving the audience and characters time to process poignant moments. A prime example of this being Gwen's story in the opening minutes. Across the Spider-Verse equally conveys exposition in smart ways, from its visual presentation of canon events to brief image flashes primarily delivered through the spot, or even scene reconstructions reminiscent of Batman Arkham Origins.
The reconstruction indicates Horace's lung was punctured. He drowned in his own blood. Clarissa took a single shot to the heart. Death was instantaneous.
In addition, keeping in line with the comic book format, Across the Spider-Verse plays with its use of captions to also convey additional exposition. Spider-Verse's snappy, tightly written dialogue allows scenes to flow and feel natural, with the majority of exchanges boasting multiple layers, exploring the film's strong themes of fate and how we can shape our own destinies, love and loss, friendship, parenthood, and most importantly, overcoming adversity.
Someone cooked here.
Moreover, the film expertly masters tone, utilizing its animation style to enhance a character's point of view, making the audience feel trapped in each individual's thoughts, in part due to how well the script treats and employs conflict, whether it be internal or external. Finally, the film boasts an incredible amount of setup and payoff that not only leads to a well-executed twist ending, but also permits the film's emotional beats in its second half to strike the audience much harder, eventually culminating into a highly enjoyable and rewatchable feature.
Can't stop me now! You can't run forever, kid!
Nah, I'm gonna do my own thing.
On the character side, our main players are Gwen Stacy, Peter B. Parker, and Miles Morales, with Miguel O'Hara and The Spot developing into our main antagonists. The Spot is a great villain with a simple story who mirrors not only Miles' desire to be seen and appreciated, but his character journey as well, starting out as a mediocre low-level crook with no confidence, who gradually grows into something greater after grasping the full use of his powers.
So are you like a cow or a Dalmatian?
I am the Spot.
This evolution is physically reflected in his design, changing from unfinished outline to constantly moving dark ink sketch, and having him primarily focus on Miles while doing his best to spare random civilians make his endgame feel even more personal. In memeology, I think this is what they call the Bagel Effect.
I'm gonna take everything from you.
Miguel O'Hara menacingly dominates every scene he's in, a character with strong convictions who felt chosen to solve the world's multiversal issues, a necessary evil. His dynamic with Miles constantly engages the audience, pitting their two philosophies against each other, even though the film gives more credit to Miles. Despite starting out as a good guy, O'Hara solidifies himself as a villain in the viewer's eyes when banishing Gwen to her dimension, setting up a high-stakes battle with our hero. Without forgetting Miguel's AI assistant Lila, who sometimes manages to keep him in check, serving as comic relief.
Okay, I know what it looks like, but here's the good news. The multiverse didn't collapse.
Oh, cool.
A little touch and go, but it worked out.
Peter B. Parker returns, and in addition to Miles, has evolved the most since Into the Spider-Verse. Still represented as a keen, seasoned vet, he now adores children and, more importantly, being a father, finally taking that leap of faith and unlocking a happy end. Despite this, he still sees Miles as his child and himself as the only one capable of pushing Morales into the right direction, in the process sadly betraying his pupil's trust only to find himself second-guessing if he can truly be a great dad, a redemption arc that I'm sure will be explored in Beyond the Spider-Verse. Gwen Stacy and Miles Morales Morales are the heart of Across the Spider-Verse, sharing the same home-life dynamic of balancing being Spider-Man and its effects on their parents. Both are in their rebellious teenage phase, but the film never exaggerates this aspect, keeping them grounded and likable, with their relationship driving most of their actions and narrative.
Is Spider-Man grounded?
Their arcs, however, diverge. On the one hand, with Gwen Stacy going from a lone wolf who now opens herself to others, overcoming obstacles with the support of newfound friends and her father, while on the other, Miles, who, in tough times, always remembered he wasn't alone, knowing other Spider-Men suffered the same daily struggles, is ultimately chased and shunned by all of them, forcing him to become a recluse. Miles ending the film with a face of despair, whilst Gwen does it with hope. Finally, every single voice performance in this film is deserving of praise, from the little snippets of dialogue by background extras to the main characters, each line delivered with passion and emotion, done justice by the equally expressive animation.
You gotta promise, Miles.
I promise.
Across the Spider-Verse is scored by Daniel Pemberton, composer of films such as The Man from U.N.C.L.E., Steve Jobs, and Into the Spider-Verse. Simply put, was absolutely
perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
Pemberton managed to surpass his previous work in every way, designing an auditory feast that can proudly join the ranks of greatest animated film scores. Across the Spider-Verse expertly blends hip-hop, rock, jazz, and techno with grand orchestral pieces found in most superhero films, all the while delivering something emotionally packed that mirrors the actions, characters, and energetic pace of the film, complementing its incredible on-screen visuals.
Perfect. Everything.
Pemberton reuses themes from what came before, although this time employs chord progressions that not only echo Into the Spider-Verse's recognizable leitmotifs, but also transform them into a musical story arc themselves. Not to mention how said themes applied to one character change in relation to the narrative. For example, the leitmotif from the first film when Miles struggles with family issues is the same one repackaged for Gwen Stacy, who goes through a similar situation with her father in this movie. Another example would be the use of the whistle theme throughout the film.
Down to the last minute details.
The aforementioned genre blends managed to let each sequence stand on their own, with a total of 8 unique characters' worlds coming together to form a cohesive story, from Gwen Stacy's soft balletic, dreamy and grunge influence, Miguel O'Hara's electronic cyberpunk infusion, Miles' hip-hop and scratch-heavy sound effects, to even Vulture's operatic segments. Daniel Pemberton does the impossible by capturing the essence of each world through music, paralleling Across the Spider-Verse's revolutionary animation. I recommend listening to Guggenheim Assemble and Nueva York Train Chase to fully grasp what I mean.
It was perfect.
In addition to the score, Metro Boomin's tailor-made soundtrack Metro Boomin Presents Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse is an incredible addition to the feature, serving as a complement to the score and narrative, all the while allowing each track to remain self-contained. Unlike a certain other superhero film who kept flaunting its soundtrack. This perfect concoction of score and soundtrack ultimately leaves us with something few modern films manage to achieve, enhancing storytelling through music.
I gotta tell you,
Don't dare finish that sentence. Don't do it. I'm sick of it.
Perfect.
Phil Lord and Christopher Miller producing Into the Spider-Verse is one of the main reasons why Sony took a leap of faith developing this new animation style for a feature, distancing itself from the now bland, safe, and tiresome Disney Pixar look. Lord and Miller have consistently been pushing the limits of animated storytelling since the Lego Movie and have unsurprisingly done it again.
Crank up those subwoofers, dude, and check this out.
And in every other universe,
Stop it now!
it doesn't end well.
Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse outshines the original visually, fully embracing the medium of animation and how exaggerated it can be, from the visible line work on characters like Miguel and the Spot, the latter stylized as an unfinished sketch with construction lines, to the film's mix of live action and animation, without forgetting all 6 unique world designs that come together through graceful direction. The noteworthy dimensions we visit are Spider-Man India's Moombatan, Gwen Stacy's Earth 65, and last but not least, the Lego world.
And then I looked at my uncle and...
let me guess. He died?
Gwen Stacy's world is the most visually striking, while Moonbatten's the most vibrant. The former uses a blue and red color palette, constantly changing backgrounds in relation to characters' emotions, making each setting feel alive, with her dimension designed to look like impressionistic watercolor paintings, a style used once before during Kingpin's flashbacks. The latter, a vibrant animated version of Mumbai, employs bright shades of red, yellow, blue, and green on an intensely congested and stacked world, reminiscent of From Software's level design for Dark Souls. Across the Spider-Verse follows its predecessor's techniques of mixing 2D and 3D animation, the use of smearing instead of motion blur, and putting flash frames and onomatopoeias on screen, making the film feel like a comic book come to life. Although this time providing a significantly polished version of what came before, in large part due to its incredible use of lighting to elevate scenes. The film mainly consists of wide and ultra-wide angle shots with a significant number of one-takes, always keeping the action and characters center-framed not to overwhelm the audience. Without the constraints of live action, Across the Spider-Verse's camera tracking makes you feel like Spider-Man, delivering spectacular shots only the medium of animation could create.
Sensational.
The film also does a lot to provide a sense of scale, making you feel like an ant in these massive new worlds, mirroring Miles' perception of being out of his depth. However, even with the marvelous achievements, there are some glaring issues. There can at times be too much happening at once on screen. This isn't helped by a few questionable editing choices that end up feeling like the production team left in lost frames, which pull you out of the experience instantly. Keep in mind the aforementioned lost frames are different to the film's usage of flashes that serve a narrative purpose. Finally, the screen can feel bloated due to its use of color shift instead of basic background blur, having your eyes constantly adapt to a slightly shifting background and fast-moving subject. Nonetheless, it is a gorgeous looking film. However, I fear that big studios take away the wrong lessons from its success. Instead of trying different animation styles or letting creative teams develop even more stylized ways to tell stories, I'm afraid that Spider-Verse's design will become the norm, and in a decade we'll find ourselves looking at it the same way we currently view Disney Pixar films.
Honor. I dream about fighting every night.
You've got a rage problem, right?
It's not a problem. I rest my case.
Did I personally enjoy the film?
Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hell yeah!
Despite its flaws and incomplete story, Across the Spider-Verse has easily become my favorite film of the year, and I pray the sequel manages to stick the landing. I do fear, however, that with the trilogy's massive success, Sony will surely set into motion a dozen spin-offs and force unnecessary sequels down our throats. Not to mention a live-action Miles Morales film that I think shouldn't be made for at least a decade.
Excuse me. A human being needs help.
Hate this dude, man. Yeah, sorry, Miles. I'm not gonna make it.
In the end, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse was a heartfelt, beautifully animated feature that managed to deliver a riveting story, all the while introducing memorable characters and set pieces unique to any Spider-Man film. Coupled with an electric score and soundtrack surpassing the original, the film's biggest flaws stem from its convoluted plot and lack of a third act, diminishing Across the Spider-Verse's chances of reaching the same heights as its predecessor. However, if you are a Spider-Man and Miles Morales fan, I'm sure you'll most likely enjoy what the film has to offer.
Who do you think you are?
We are supposed to be the good guys.
We are.
Thank you all for watching and sticking around this long. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do subscribe and drop a like if you did, and hopefully, I'll see you all next time.